I feel like I'm living in the Twilight Zone. For so many decades, we have been hearing about Nazism and Hitler and the evils of Nazism. And now we're seeing tons of people online talking about the glories of Hitler and how Hitler actually wasn't that bad. And we're seeing people in major positions of influence and power pushing eugenics. And what did we learn from the mid-20th century? The evils of eugenics. And how social Darwinism and eugenics and ultranationalism put together led to the extermination of millions of people. And here we are saying, oh, everything's fine. This is fine. I'm not really worried. People are saying, I'm not really worried. I don't know. I feel like I'm living in the Twilight Zone. And so many decades hearing from evangelicals about the mark of the beast and how the mark of the beast is going to be a computer chip inserted into people's bodies. And here you have Elon Musk saying that people who don't get the chip put into their brains are not going to be as advanced and as evolved as those who are going to have the chip put into their brains. He's talking about microchips in people's brains and how it's going to help in the next stage of human evolution. And you have Christians saying, oh, I really like Elon Musk. And I'm like, what the hell? I might as well just throw my hands in the air. All right, everyone. So let's talk about Germany. What's going on over there? Well, you have a split within Germany's Nationalist Party, the Alternative for Deutschland Party, the AfD. A split over what, you may ask? It is a split over Israel. The split is in between the chairwoman of the AfD, Alice Weidel, who is a lesbian who supports Israel, which is not surprising at all, and the co-chairman of the party, Mr. Tino Trupala, who has stated that to give weapons to Israel is to support the killing of civilians. And this is all very, very interesting stuff because, well, the AfD party has been a party that is praised for having a Jewish branch. And you have these Israelis who come out, and you'll see this sort of thing on Twitter, Israelis who will come out and say, oh, look, the AfD, they have a Jewish branch within their party. They're really good for Israel. But within the AfD party, you have people who are against Israel. And more than that, you have people within the AfD who are not very favorable to the idea of Germany talking about the Holocaust all the time. And they're sick and tired of seeing Holocaust memorials. And they don't want to see them anymore. And this is all quite worrisome for obvious reasons, but it's not really surprising. Why is it not surprising? Well, because this is, at the end of the day, a German nationalist party. And the last time Germany was under a nationalist party, Germany butchered millions of Jews. They did the Holocaust. So when we hear about a German nationalist party being one of the biggest parties in Germany, I don't really have to go into great detail to explain why this is worrisome. Germany has a history of this, and that's putting it lightly. Within the AfD party, there is a Nazi element, and that Nazi element is growing. It is growing. And the head of this Nazi element is Björn Höcke. Björn Höcke is the most famous leader of the AfD. He has really a huge faction within the party. He runs a major faction within the party. And the thing about Björn Höcke is that he's not too kind to the idea of talking about the Holocaust. He has expressed his spite towards the tradition of having Holocaust memorials in Germany, and he has said that Germany is the only country in the world that will erect a monument of shame. And he said this in regards to a Holocaust memorial in Berlin. And there was a crowd listening to him as he was declaring this speech. And this crowd wasn't sitting there saying, oh my God, this is anti-Semitic. This is, Bjorn, I mean, we had Hitler in the past, and let's not repeat history here. Calm down, Bjorn. No. They were cheering him as he was exclaiming this belief. They were cheering him. So when you hear about a crowd of Germans cheering a man expressing his spite towards the tradition, towards the custom of putting up Holocaust memorials in Germany because Germany orchestrated the Holocaust, that is worrisome, to say the least. It's not good. It is not good. And it's growing. And if you look at recent polls in Germany in regards to what are the most popular parties, the second most popular party in Germany is what? The AfD. They are right behind the Christian Democrats. And I warned people about this back in 2016. I said this. I told people nationalism is going to rise in Germany. It's going to grow. And you had these people telling me, oh, no, it's not, because Germans are so liberal. They're so liberal, guys. And I'm just wondering to myself, why are people so dumb? Why are people so resistant towards something that is so obvious? Why are people so resistant towards the idea of just looking at the obvious reality of human existence? You look at history and you have an idea of what the future holds. It's not that complicated. If you meet a guy who has a very long criminal record and you become friends with him, and then one day he robs your house, you shouldn't be surprised. And you would say, oh my God, this guy robbed me. Oh my God, what's going on? I was his friend. I helped him out. And then I come along and say, well, what was his background? What was his history? Well, he had a mile-long freaking criminal record. And I would say, okay, why are you surprised? Why are you shocked? Germany has a history. And in this history, when Germany becomes ultra-nationalistic, they enter the warpath. And what's been going on in Germany? Look at what's been happening to Germany's industry. Volkswagen is facing major layoffs for now and the future. And the big steel company over there in Germany, what's it called? Tyson, I think it's called Tyson Krupp Steel. They're facing major layoffs. Major layoffs. Yeah, Tyson Krupp. And this is a major company. And so the German economy is being hurt real bad. And that goes without saying. So what are we seeing in Germany? We're seeing the rise of nationalism, and we are seeing the economy hurting. And what happened before Hitler took power? There was what? A really bad economy, and there was nationalism. And the people voted for Hitler. And what else do you see happening in the world? What do you see in the midst of this right-wing surge, in the midst of this nationalist surge? You see the revival of eugenics. And I've talked about this before. I did a video about this recently. I've done numerous videos about this phenomenon. Eugenics is being revived. And you are seeing eugenics being pushed by who? Major influencers on the internet. Major influencers. It's not like you have some obscure blogs in the blogosphere. Remember that term, the blogosphere, from back in the day? Everyone had not everyone, but a lot of people had blogs, and there was blogs. Remember Blogspot? Blogspot. I had a Blogspot. A lot of people had a Blogspot. Blogspot.com, blah, blah, blah. It's not like it's some obscure blogs on Blogspot that have, 5 readers or something like that. No, these are major influencers. Do you see, guys? Do you see how creepy this is? When you see Chris Williamson, one of the biggest podcasters on YouTube, openly pushing for eugenics, saying that families that don't partake in embryo selection, they're going to fall behind those who do. And he invites eugenists onto his show, interviewing them. He interviewed this Jewish eugenist by the name of Jonathan Anomaly. Now, we all know Anomaly is not a real name. That's a fake-ass name. And he himself said that his original last name was an Ellis Island last name, and for some reason he didn't like that, so he changed his last name to Anomaly. And the guy gets on Chris Williamson's show to talk about eugenics and to talk about how, well, Christian families that are not going to partake in eugenics are going to be at a genetic disadvantage to those who are going to partake in eugenics, because the ones who will partake in eugenics, they're going to go through embryo selection. They're not going to have kids the normal way. They're not going to have kids by just having sex, which is the real way of human reproduction. That's the way God intended it. That's the way God made it. No. No, they're going to have kids by having them bred in a freaking lab like some vegetables. You know how they talk about how, a new vegetable was bred. They did some cross-pollination. They came up with this new vegetable. They took it to a lab and analyzed it. Something like that, right? We've heard of plants being analyzed in labs. They want human beings analyzed in labs. Genetically screened. I mean, look how sick this is. People are so sick, guys. It's so sickening. Like the old way, the real way of just having human reproduction, all right? The husband bangs his wife. That's the normal way. And they're saying, no. Well, what we want is a future where sex will not be done for reproduction. Reproduction will be done in a lab. And some scientist from New York City, he's gonna take the guy's sperm and the woman's eggs. He's going to put them together. He's going to form embryos in a lab. He's going to genetically screen them, and he's going to say, this embryo, you guys want a genius for a child, right? You guys want a wonderful genius for a child because, I don't know, maybe you're Asian Americans and your parents put pressure on you to have genius kids, and they want you to have kids who are going to be engineers and doctors, and they say things to you like, I don't want my grandkids to be stupid. I want smart children. And so you take you have your embryos bred in a lab. And then some geneticist is going to come and say, well, this is the embryo that has the genes for genius. This is the one that has the genius genes. So we're going to put this one in the womb. The rest of them, we're going to put them down the waste bin. Maybe we'll do, I don't know, some scientific experimentation with them, something like that. And this is how they want humanity to reproduce. This is how they want humanity to procreate. Just everything is bred in a lab. And they also want babies to be not developed in the womb, embryos developed in the womb. They want embryos to be developed in these glass vats in labs. And it's like that scene from Morpheus, where Morpheus takes Neo to the desert of the real. And he shows all these humans in these red vats. And he says, they are endless fields, Neo, where human beings are not born. We are grown. And it is horrifying. Now, The Matrix is a sci-fi horror movie. And what these people are pushing for is something close to a sci-fi horror movie. And it's being pushed by all the big YouTube channels, these big major YouTube channels. Joe Rogan will bring people who support eugenics. And Joe Rogan is the biggest podcaster in the world. The guy who was behind Brexit, Mr. Dominic Cummings, one of his goals for Brexit was to sever the UK from the EU so that it could become a center for eugenic research, eugenist research, social Darwinist research. And Mr. Dominic Cummings, well, he wants global embryo selection. And these eugenists, they believe that if you do not participate in eugenics and embryo selection, well, your kids are not going to be as developed, as evolved as the kids who are going to be bred in a lab. Because the kids who are going to be bred in a lab, well, they're going to be screened. When they were developed in a lab, they were screened for the good genes, for the fit genes. And so they're going to be born, they're going to be allowed to be born, and the Christian kids who were conceived naturally, well, they're going to be at a genetic disadvantage, as Mr. Jonathan Anomaly says, which means they're going to be genetically inferior to the kids who were bred in a lab. So this is what's being pushed. And now you have the richest guy in the world, Elon Musk, also believing in eugenics and saying that, hey, the people who don't have the big microchip inserted into their brain, they're not going to be as developed. They're not going to be as evolved as the ones who are going to have the AI technology put into their brain. It's eugenics. This is all transhumanist eugenics, and it's being pushed by the elites. It's being pushed by major influencers. It's being pushed by the richest man in the world. So it's no longer something that's confined to just some blogs from 2005. No. It's being pushed by the elites. And Dominic Cummings, he wrote about eugenics. The guy who was behind Brexit, he wrote about eugenics. And his article on eugenics was read by some people at Google, and then he was invited to speak at the SciFu conference, where there was another eugenist also speaking. He was invited. This eugenist is Stephen Su, an Asian American eugenist who was one of the main inspirations for Dominic Cummings in his ideology of social Darwinism. So you have people in Google who want eugenics. You have the wealthiest guy in the world who wants eugenics. You have Silicon Valley billionaires who want eugenics. They're into genetic manipulation, engineering, designer babies. Oh, you wanted a baby who looks like an Aryan, who looks like what was portrayed as the ideal Aryan by the Nazis. Okay, we'll do that for you. Yes, we only want babies who are geniuses and look a certain way. We got it. We have CRISPR. We have embryo selection. So we have eugenics, we have nationalism, we have economic problems. We have the perfect combination for a Hitler to rise up. A Hitler to rise up, to push eugenics, to push ultranationalism, to push racism. And we all know the end of that story. We have seen this story before in World War II. And look how that turned out. Millions of people dead, people being used for human experimentation. And what's so scary is that you have people in the West who see this nationalism rising up in Germany. They see that the AfD is the second or third most popular party in Germany. And they say, this is great. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, we're seeing it. We are seeing people being engulfed into this fold of Nazism, into this fold of really what is mid-20th century progressivism. And what's scary is that you have conservatives being pulled into this. The AfD is great. The AfD is not conservative. The AfD is liberal. They are liberal. The chairwoman is a lesbian. The most famous leader of the AfD believes in eugenics. These people are sick. They are absolutely sick. And if you go back to the mid-20th century, if you go back to the mid-20th century, back to the generation of your great-grandparents, and maybe your grandparents if they're super old, I don't know, you will see mid-20th century progressivism. And what it was a mixture. It was an amalgamation that entailed social Darwinism and eugenics. And there's really no difference between those two. And so social Darwinism and eugenics was mainstream in the mid-20th century. It was super popular. It was the cool thing to believe in. If you were someone who was a Christian who said, hey, this is wrong, you were probably seen as some sort of a half-wit. In those days, eugenics was the cool thing to believe in. And it was so popular that the U.S. Supreme Court supported it. If you look at the case of Buck versus Bell, which was done back in the 1920s, you will see one of America's most famous Supreme Court justices in its history, Mr. Oliver Wendell Holmes, backed the policy of mandatory sterilization. Yes, he said it's not unconstitutional. You believe that? We have this thing called the Constitution in America. Isn't that crazy? And people say, oh, well, the Constitution is about freedom. It's about freedom and liberty and protecting man's God-given rights. It protects the fact that we as human beings are created and given by our Creator unalienable rights. That may be true technically. That may be true in light of what the Founding Fathers wanted, but the reality is that the Constitution is a slip of paper that is used for whatever evil the powers that be want to justify. The Constitution is interpreted in a way where it can be used to justify whatever evil trend people want to justify. And so Oliver Wendell Holmes, he said what? He said, it's not unconstitutional. It is not unconstitutional to force someone to be sterilized. And this was policy in the United States. He constitutionalized eugenics. Pretty evil. Pretty freaking evil. But that was back in the 1920s. And who got wind of it? Adolf Hitler, the Germans. And the Germans took what the Americans were doing, and they started doing it in their own country. But they didn't stop there. They began to build extermination camps. And our own times are eerily similar to the time before Hitler took power. You had eugenics, nationalism, and we are seeing what? The revival of eugenics, the revival of ultranationalism. And so you see this split within the AfD over Israel. You see these Germans split over this Semitic country, the only Jewish state, Israel. And you have some AfDers, some German nationalists, conservatives, saying, oh, no, we should support Israel because Israel is fighting against the Muslims. But then you have another faction in the AfD who are basically saying, you guys don't get it. You guys think that we're just some run-of-the-mill conservatives, that we're going to support Israel and wave the Jewish flag. We are German nationalists. We are about German nationalism. We are not about supporting the nationalism of another country, especially some Semitic Middle Eastern country called Israel. Remember, what happened the last time Germany was under a nationalist party? They butchered millions of Jews. So if you have a Germany under ultra-nationalism, and when I mean ultra-nationalism, I'm not talking about a situation where you have a nationalist party that has a big presence in the parliament and things are going to go on as usual and things are normal and they're trying to push certain things, but they can't because there are other political elements within the government that put a stop to them. I'm talking if Germany becomes fully under the power of ultra-nationalists, racist Germans, basically Sieg Heil Germans, Germany is not going to be very nice. And that's an understatement. It's going to be very, very ugly. And I'm not saying this is going to happen next year. I'm saying 10, 15 years from now. That's what I'm looking at here. And I know I did a video talking about Mr. Peter Zion because Peter Zion predicted that Trump was going to lose. And I said, Peter Zion said Trump was going to lose and he was wrong. And a lot of people have looked up to Mr. Zion as someone who was very proficient in the art of political analysis. And I said in that video, I said, Peter Zion is very educated and he is very articulate. I can't take that away from him. But he was wrong when he said that Trump wasn't going to win. But Peter Zion has also talked about the rise of German nationalism. And he has said that he is not really worried about German nationalism for the coming year because, well, not a whole lot of things happen in a year. I'm talking about major shifts in culture. They don't happen in a year. They happen gradually, incrementally within a span of decades, really, somewhere around there. And Peter Zion said, I'm not really worried about what these nationalists are going to do next year or in the next few years. I'm talking about 10 to 15 years. And he said 10 to 15 years, things can look very, very ugly in the political scene of Germany. And I agree with him. I absolutely agree with him. Things can look very, very ugly in that time span, in that window of time. And you have people who come out and they say, oh, no. This is great. This is wonderful. And I'm thinking, how can people be so arrogant and so evil to just ignore the realities of history? Look around you. Look at what's happening. I feel like I'm living in the Twilight Zone. I feel like I'm living in the Twilight Zone. For so many decades, we have been hearing about Nazism and Hitler and the evils of Nazism. And now we're seeing tons of people online talking about the glories of Hitler and how Hitler actually wasn't that bad. And we're seeing people in major positions of influence and power pushing eugenics. And what did we learn from the mid-20th century? The evils of eugenics and how social Darwinism and eugenics and ultranationalism put together led to the extermination of millions of people. And here we are saying, oh, everything's fine. This is fine. I'm not really worried. People are saying, I'm not really worried. I don't know. I feel like I'm living in the Twilight Zone. And so many decades hearing from evangelicals about the mark of the beast and how the mark of the beast is going to be a computer chip inserted into people's bodies. And here you have Elon Musk saying that people who don't get the chip put into their brains are not going to be as advanced and as evolved as those who are going to have the chip put into their brains. He's talking about microchips in people's brains and how it's going to help in the next stage of human evolution. And you have Christians saying, oh, I really like Elon Musk. And I'm like, what the hell? I might as well just throw my hands in the air. What is the point? I mean, listen, I do these videos. I love doing these videos, guys. I love doing these videos. I do. And this is my fourth YouTube channel. This is my fourth YouTube channel. And out of all the channels that I've had, for some reason, this is the channel that I have been most attached to. I don't know why. Maybe it's because of all the weird and surreal things that have been going on in our society and in the world. But this is the channel that I have been most invested in psychologically. And I have had bigger channels. I had a channel that had, I want to say around 6,000. I had another channel that had around, I want to say 5,000 or so subscribers. I mean, but this is the one. I have over 3,000 subs, and I'm happy. And my videos get on average 600 plus views. Listen, if I get a video with 600 plus views, I'm like, that's good. I'm content with that. I'm fine, because I do not expect my warnings to be popular. I do not expect what I'm saying to be a popular topic of discussion. Because people don't want to hear this. People want to hear about how this is amazing, Trump won, this is so awesome, Elon Musk is there, this is so great. That's what people want to hear. That's what people want to hear. Oh, look, Joe Rogan, he's defeating the left, he's giving it to the libs. That's what people want to hear. People don't want to hear that actually what you're seeing in this cultural battle between the woke and the anti-woke is really just a battle between liberals. You have the liberals who are woke on one side, and then on the other side you have the liberals like Joe Rogan. You have the liberals like Elon Musk. You have the liberals like Peter Thiel, and they're fighting against the woke left. And I can't prove this, but I really suspect that the woke left is something that was propped up by whoever, the people who dress up in black hoods who run the world, I don't know. I believe that the woke left was propped up as a piñata for the other liberals to attack, so that the Christians, the common Christian conservative, can come out and say, oh, look, the liberals are on our side. These liberals who are pro-gay and pro-abortion, they're on our side. And that's one thing I've noticed over the years. So many Christians are just waiting. There are a lot of American conservatives. This is some objective criticism for you guys. A lot of American conservatives are sycophants. And a lot of you guys are waiting for some pop star, not pop star, but some celebrity to support Christians and to say nice things about Christians, or to uphold some kind of conservative cause. So you guys can say, oh, look, here we have this famous person for our ally. I've noticed this about American Christians, especially evangelicals, but, Catholics do the same thing. I've noticed this for years. I've noticed this for so many years. I saw this with Tim Tebow. Oh, look, one of our guys is an NFL star. This is amazing. You guys are always looking for some kind of a celebrity who's going to back you up. And so you have the woke left. They're pushing transgenderism, open borders, that sort of thing. I keep touching my nose. I'm becoming like that Slavoj Žižek guy. I'm like, Marx, when you read Marx and Hegel, I'm becoming like that guy. What's going on with me? But the woke left, I believe, was propped up, and these liberals who are nationalists, who are eugenists in some cases, they started attacking the woke left. And now the Christians have been coming out saying, oh, look at these cool people who are agreeing with us on transgenderism. But here's the thing. They still agree with the idea of Sodom. They still agree with gay marriage. They still agree with the idea of embracing Sodom. They still agree with abortion. They are huge supporters of abortion. Oh, and I've noticed this recently. Anna Kasparian, that stupid woman, she's a real, oh my God, she's a nasty woman. I was going to say the B word, but I don't want to, I'm trying not to cuss on these videos. She's a nasty, nasty woman. This is a woman who has bashed and said vitriolic things against women who are pro-life. She has said, she has expressed her animosity and hatred against women who are against abortion. And she voted in favor of a law in California that says that you can steal things, and as long as the products that you have stolen are under $900 something, you will not be charged with a misdemeanor charge or a felony charge. You will not be given a felony charge. You'll be given just a misdemeanor. So stealing $900 of products, or $850 or $870 of products, that's just a misdemeanor charge. And we all know that criminals are always looking for opportunities to get away with crimes, or to just to do a crime and then get a lenient punishment. They're always looking for those types of opportunities. It's like a Middle Eastern person getting a discount. I mean, Middle Eastern people will always look for opportunities to save money and get discounts. Well, criminals are always looking for opportunities to commit crimes and then only get a misdemeanor charge, because they don't want a felony charge. They want a misdemeanor charge because that means not really spending a whole lot of time behind bars, or really just getting a slap on the wrist. She voted in favor for that. And then she says, well, I didn't know that it would eventually lead to the streets of California being riddled with drug addicts. She got sexually assaulted, which is terrible. That's a terrible thing. She was sexually assaulted, and then all of a sudden she wakes up. And now she's fighting with the left and all that. It's like, well, hold on. You were bashing conservatives, bashing Republicans for all these years, and now, you've seen the light. So now all these Christians, these conservatives online are saying, oh, look, Anna Kasparian, she's coming to our side. No, she's not. She is still a liberal. She is still pro-abortion. She is still pro-Sodom. She is still a liberal. So what we are seeing really in this SJW versus anti-SJW war, or the woke versus the anti-woke war, what we're actually seeing in this cultural battle is liberals fighting each other. And so Christians are siding with the liberals who are against the woke left, but you're still siding with liberalism. And what is real liberalism? I learned about real liberalism many years ago, back in the early 2000s, when I was researching for my first book, In Satan's Footsteps. And I read about real liberalism, how it involved eugenics and social Darwinism and racism and all these horrible things. That's real liberalism. So what we're actually witnessing is a revival of real, authentic, fundamentalist liberalism. It's like the moderate Muslims versus the fundamentalist Muslims. It's like the moderate Muslims versus ISIS. And the moderate Muslims, they're kind of like the woke left. They're the liberals. They have very crazy and destructive beliefs, but at the same time, they're not ultra-nationalist, but they're still bad. Don't get me wrong. And then you have the fundamentalist liberals. These are the ones who are saying, no, we got to go back to what Darwin taught. Just like the fundamentalist Muslims will come out and say, we got to go back to what Muhammad taught. We got to go back to what the Quran taught. And now you have the fundamentalist liberals saying, we got to go back to what Darwin actually taught. That's what we're seeing, guys. We got to go back to what Darwin taught. We got to go back to those days. We got to go back to Malthusianism. Malthusianism was an ideology founded by a guy named Thomas Malthus, who was an Anglican minister, by the way. It's very weird that there was an Anglican minister who was the one who first really popularized the idea of population control in the modern world. That's what Thomas Malthus did. And Thomas Malthus believed that certain people needed to be allowed to die by disease or by starvation because they're genetically inferior. This is what Thomas Malthus believed. And the English took that idea and they applied it to the Irish. And when the Irish were starving because a lot of their potato harvests were destroyed because of a blight, and the English went out and they took a whole bunch of potatoes out of Ireland for themselves, they allowed the Irish to starve. And when the Irish were starving, you know what the English said? They said, well, let them starve because they're Irish, they're inferior. It's like every single time some kind of a crazy ideology like that becomes popular, something akin to eugenics, social engineering, anything like that, genetic engineering, any sort of ideology that dehumanizes people, that dehumanizes society, always leads to massive deaths and mass murder. And they murdered the Irish. And I did a video talking about the Irish potato famine, and a whole bunch of Irish people came to my comment section and they said, don't call it a famine. It's a genocide. But that was the result of Malthusianism. And so people today are saying what? Listen, Thomas Malthus, I'm sure if you would have talked to him, I'm sure he would tell you, oh, I don't believe in killing millions of people. No, I don't believe in that. Oh, no. And what are the eugenists today saying? They're saying, oh, no, we don't believe in killing people. We're not Nazis. Oh, no, and you have Jewish people who are pushing for eugenics. Jonathan Anomaly is one of them. They're pushing for eugenics. And they're saying, oh, no, we're not Nazis. Oh, no, we're not going to do that. That's what they said the last time. And when eugenics became popularized in the mid-20th century, look at what it resulted in. Millions of deaths. Well, but they'll say, oh, no, we don't want that. We just want some embryo selection, and we want to just better humanity. We want a better society. Who is to say that you should stop at just embryo selection? And embryo selection is bad unto itself. Don't get me wrong. I don't support it at all. It's creepy. I think it's freaking creepy. The idea of breeding humans in a lab. I mean, give me a freaking break. It sounds like something out of fucking Brave New World. Excuse my language, but it's horrifying. I am legitimately horrified thinking about this. Like, human beings are just bred in a lab. I mean, there's a reason why they. I don't want to get like explicit here, but there's a reason why they call sex lovemaking, because, well, when you produce a child through the real way of producing a child, that child is conceived in love, right? I understand that they are dysfunctional families, but in an ideal situation, you have a man and a woman, not Adam and Steve, it's Adam and Eve. When you have a man and a woman who love each other and they have intercourse, they have a child. That child is conceived what? In love. Right? And so what these people are saying is, no, let's conceive a child with the absence of love in a lab, in a cold room. It's sick. It's just sick, guys. Oh my God, I hate this shit. I really do, guys. I hate it. I hate it so much. And they'll say, well, we just want to better humanity genetically. But who's to say that that's going to stop there? Who's going to say that it's just going to stop at that? Who's going to say? It didn't stop at mandatory sterilization back in the 1920s. It didn't stop. The Germans accepted it. They started doing mandatory sterilization. It did not stop at mandatory sterilization. It amplified. The Overton window was extended to what? Death camps, extermination. And they believe that we're continuously evolving, right? So because we're continuously evolving, well, natural selection must be done. But here's the thing about these people's ideology. You see, in the worldview of evolution, evolution has a whole pseudo-history. The pseudo-history is that we were once humanoid creatures. We were close to, we were basically some kind of a monkey, ape-like humanoid creature. And then, we had sex with Neanderthals or some shit. So they had their own pseudo-history, like Scientology got a pseudo-history. Oh, yes, there were all these planets, and there was this one guy who was the head of the Space Confederacy, and there was a battle, and the Thetans were cast into Earth. Like, they got their own pseudo-history. So evolutionism has a pseudo-history. And in this pseudo-history, mankind was a bunch of humanoids. We weren't Homo sapiens. And the humanoids were butchering each other. And the ones who were fit killed off the ones who were unfit. And the ones who were unfit were also killed off by, disease, starvation, etc. So the ones who were fit, they killed off the ones who were unfit. They took all the resources and they made it, and their good, superior fit genes got passed down. And the next generation had the same thing. They killed each other. The ones with the best genes got passed down, got perpetuated. The rest of them were selected for destruction. Right? This is the pseudo-history of evolutionism. And through that constant process of death and killing, and the good genes just being passed down, and the fit genes being passed down, the humanoids evolved into later types of humanoids, and then eventually, they had sex with Neanderthals, and they evolved, the humanoids evolved into Homo sapiens, what we are today. This is the pseudo-history. This is the lore. This is the mythology that they want us to believe in. And then you go to the Lawrence Hall of Science in the Bay Area, and they have they show you, this is evolution. They show you, see, there was a primate, and then the primate evolved to this type of primate, and then it evolved to a humanoid, and there was a Neanderthal, and then, and then they have a little empty slot on the door, on this board, so that the kid can put his face on it, and so that they could say, look, this is what, they eventually evolved to you. They evolved into humans, you. And so you put your little face on the slot, you say, oh yeah, and the little arrow's pointing at you, and the little arrow's coming right after the photo of some Neanderthal hybrid, whatever, alien creature. And the question I have is, who the hell put the arrows there? I mean, they say, like, we evolved from this and that and this, but there's arrows there. Those arrows are put there by human beings because they want to force this narrative that we evolved from these lower creatures and all this. But evolutionism teaches that evolution is simply the process of death and killing. Things died, the inferior genes disappeared, the fit genes continued on. So in our society, we have Christian ethics, Christian charity, and in Christian charity, we take care of the weak and the vulnerable. But in evolutionism and Darwinism, it's survival of the fittest. And so the weak and the vulnerable, well, they need to go because they're the weak and the vulnerable, and we have to be these callous figures of natural selection. But Christianity ruins this entire barbaric worldview, and that's why they hate Christianity. That's why they hate Christian charity. So they want to remove the Christian obstacle to their ideology, to their evil ways. And so they're saying, well, welfare and charity and all these things, they're all just hindrances to the process of evolution. They're hindrances to the process of natural selection. So that's why they want everyone to do embryo selection. They don't want people just to have sex and have kids. They want everyone to have embryo selection. And that way they can say, this is the embryo that we want to be born. These other embryos are not really worthy of life. So they want to be the natural selectors. They want to be natural selection. So if they want to be natural selection, that means they want to select who lives and who dies. Who can be born, who shouldn't be born. So with such a barbaric mentality already, who's to say that it's just going to stop at embryo selection? Eventually, it'll accelerate or it'll escalate to the point where you're going to have human selection, not just embryo selection. They're going to say, well, the kid here, he's not very smart. He's got the bad genes. He shouldn't really be having kids, so maybe he should be sterilized. And who knows, maybe from there it'll escalate to death camps and gas chambers. But going back to what I was saying earlier in the beginning of this video, because I really just segued off there. The AFD party saying that they have a split, or the media saying that the AFD party has a split between Israel. Well, what happens? Because you have these Jewish people who are pro-nationalism. There's a lot of them. And they'll say things like, oh, we love the AFD. They're not anti-Semites. They have a Jewish branch. But yet the most popular leader of the AFD says that he's sick and tired of seeing Holocaust memorials. He's tired of seeing them. And And he says we need to have a complete 180-degree turnaround in regards to the politics of remembrance. Well, remembrance of what? The Holocaust. So they want to change the history. They don't want to talk about the Holocaust anymore. They want to revive Nazi slogans. That's why Bjorn Holke says, everything for Germany, everything for Deutschland. They said that's a Nazi slogan. Don't say that. He says it again, knowing that it's a Nazi slogan. We know for a fact that Bjorn Holke, before he became prominent in politics, we know for a fact that Bjorn Holke was writing articles for neo-Nazi publications praising the Third Reich. So if you're a Jewish person and you think the AFD is great, think again, and I'm here to educate you. And if you don't want to listen to me, well, then you just hate advice. And you know what the Jewish Bible says about advising a fool. Advise a fool, and he will hate you. And that's the God-honest truth. And so, if these nationalists really get their way, they're going to go right back to the days of old. They're going to go right back to their roots. And they're going to hate the Jews. And they're going to hate Israel. Sure, they hate foreigners and migrants, but don't think that the Jews will be exempt from these people's hatred. And that's the bottom line. So we're seeing this rise in nationalism, this right-wing surge. And the thing is, as long as these right-wingers have some kind of sympathy to Israel, or they at least try to show that they're sympathetic towards Israel, Israel's not worried. Israel's not worried about it at all. But if the AFD gets overtaken by its Nazi element, by the Bjorn Holkes, and the Bjorn Holke faction is very strong and has a very large presence within the AFD, if that Nazi element takes over, they're not going to be very nice. And if enough white Europeans go against Israel, if enough white people in the Western world go against Israel, Israel's in big trouble, because Israel is defended by the West. And the majority demographic in the West are white people. And if enough white people end up becoming like Tucker Carlson, saying that they're done with Israel, they're sick and tired of hearing about Israel, Israel is in deep, deep trouble. Because that would mean losing the support of the West. What's keeping Israel protected, really, is the boomer generation. The boomer generation, the older generation that says we support Israel because the Bible tells us so, or we support Israel because of what happened in the Holocaust, etc. That boomer generation is what's protecting Israel. Once that boomer generation becomes extinct, there's going to be a whole new story. There's going to be a whole new page, because young people don't care about Israel for the most part. They don't care about Israel. Europeans, for the most part, don't care about Israel. So this is why I say, and I've said this many times, the future of Israel looks very, very bleak. And we're seeing it. So there you go. I spent, how long have I been talking? I spent 45 minutes just bleeding my heart to you guys here. So here we go. And I'm happy about it. I'm happy with this video. It's very nice to just be able to express yourself to the world. And this is how I feel, truly. This is how I feel. I'm very worried about what is going on and how we are just reviving old demons back from the dead. It's pretty sickening. Anyway, you guys just heard some theology. God bless.